the mistakes that I believe leaders make is try to act like they're not afraid. Something can be the Lord's will, but you are still have fear.
Courage is recognizing that, yeah, I am afraid, but I'm still going to go do this thing because I'm convinced that this is the thing that needs to be done. You're going to experience fear. You're human. If this fails and you're the leader, it's on you.
Welcome to season 5.
Can you believe it?
Of the MyBLVD podcast.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Season 5 of 2025.
Do you feel old? Because I haven't done 5 seasons. So
I don't feel old. I feel more mature. And
that's
why I'm not wearing a hat. I wanted the people to feel
okay.
Like, you know, if you're looking
Elevated.
on this online, you can see the grays. You can see that's a sign of maturity. And I think that's really what this is about.
I like it. Okay.
So season 5.
Mm-hmm.
Last season we focused on like the 5 questions of an urban missionary.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We talked about who, the what, the when, the where, the why. This season, we're going to get beyond all those formal definitions.
Yep.
And we're going to take this thing on the street level.
Okay.
Right? We're going to talk about this. What are some of the tangible concerns? What are some of the challenges that we have as urban missionaries?
Yes.
But we're going to take a little bit of different slant. So we're going to talk about some of the challenges, some of the hard things that we deal with on the street level as practitioners. But we're going to come at it from kind of our unique perspectives.
Yeah. I do like this.
You're going to come to it as an ethicist. What is an ethicist?
Ethics is really the morality, the why we making certain decisions behind things. And I've always been very interested in the historical whys, but also really the morality-based whys we make certain decisions. All right.
Yeah. Because I'm going to come at it from a missiologist. And sometimes those moral whys get in the way.
Yeah.
To what I'm trying to do missiologically.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so the question is when mission meets morality,
when our ethics line up. Yeah, they either line up or they collide. Which one is it going to be?
But there's stories. There's stories like Rahab. There's stories like, the person, so many just different things like we talk about, like in Luke chapter 16, we talk about the wise steward, the generous stewards, and he was just like, the world is more wise with their money than you are with.
Yes.
Like there was some ethical things that were going on there, but it seemed like Jesus was kind of praising that. So,
Yes, but morality starts with our Savior.
Amen.
We learn what's good because he's good.
Amen.
So.
Amen. And again, I'm not going to be over here acting like I'm the
no
non-moral guy.
No fighting. This is not about fighting.
But it is. I think. But we're going to talk about like this. We're going to talk about this idea of when ethics meets missions, and being able to do it. And so we're going to break this up into kind of parts, and like we're going to have like parts within parts. Like these first 3 episodes, we're just going to talk about leadership. It just seems like everything right now is about leadership or the problem with leadership. I don't trust institutions. I don't trust leaders. I got this hurt. I got that hurt. Like, and all that. And I think it's real and it's an important thing. And so we just want to talk about like that for our missionaries, for people who are missionaries, like how can we have a good conscience, but at the same time continue the mission that will go, because sometimes it feels like you got to choose between the other. And I don't ever think that's the case.
Yeah, I don't think that we always have to choose between mission and morality, or our mission statement and our ethical beliefs. But what I do think is often we set up the mission apart from our ethical grid. And so then there's the colliding when it's time to make certain decisions, when the mission should come from the Lord and the ethical grid should come from the Lord. And then we see them overlap. And then how do we let them run? And then we just deal with the fact that we're in a fallen world and we got stuff that's going to fall apart.
Stuff is going to fall apart. So can we strike the rock?
Let's strike the rock.
Striking the rock, when Moses, he's just like, I'm tired of people. And he was just like, and again, that's the reason why Moses didn't get to go to the promised land.
The Lord very clearly said to him, talk to the rock.
Yes, talk to the rock. But he struck the rock. Because listen, if you had 5,000 people complaining.
Oh, I'm not saying I don't understand. I'm saying, but there's a consequence. It's like you tell your kids, do not open the door for strangers under any circumstance. And you come in and the man that you just met at the bus stop is on the couch. I understand that he said he knew you, but what did I tell you to do?
Yes.
I get all of the reasons why he's in the house, and you are such a great, hospitable child.
Yes.
I told you what to do, though.
Yeah. All right. That's good. Well, so for me as an urban missiologist, I got my master's from DTS in missions. I got my DMin in missions, right? Specifically urban missions. Right. And so I am all about the mission of God.
I love it.
I want to take the mission of God together. So I'm really excited about these conversations because I think oftentimes this is some of the tension that people on staff may feel, or tensions. Like, so when we talk about leading ministries, leading nonprofits, leading churches, it's just kind of like, man, how do we wrestle with that tension where people are like, we need to stop, we need to deal with this ethical issue. And I'm just like, if we always are dealing with the ethical issues, we're never going to be on God's mission because there's always going to be issues that we're dealing with.
See, and I studied ethics, theology, and culture. And one of the things I recognized is that in the mission, the people have to understand and really grasp the mission. And so if I am not pausing to talk to the people, to make sure everybody's on the same page, then we're going to keep tripping up the mission. So that's where I come in. And I'm like, I know the mission is, and I see the statement and it's on the wall and it's clear. These three people don't get it. We got to slow down so I can work with these three people to help them understand the mission. So that's where I come in.
All right. So for these first 3 episodes, we're going to talk about one, organizational change. How do we do that? Because it seems like things are always changing.
Yes.
Right. And because things are always changing, the fact that we would deal with that in a different ways brings about conflict. So that's going to be episode 2. We're going to talk about conflict, conflict resolution, conflict managing, all things conflict, and being able. And then third, we're just going to talk about kind of this idea of what is leadership. And that may even sound backwards.
I was about to say, we should have did that first. But the reason why I think we didn't is because I think having a vision of what leadership looks like, and as we talk through those things, and then saying, so now this is what we've seen. This is what it is.
Yes.
Gives us a better picture.
And I think it's important because especially it's not if people disagree with you, it's when people disagree with you and how they disagree. And so us talking through the change, through the change management, through kind of like this idea that confrontation, then we can start saying, okay, what is leadership then? Right? If we're doing it, who wants that type of leadership? So part of this is like, we want to encourage you as missionaries, anybody who's out there leading organization, leading, to stay the fight. To stay the fight.
Stay the course.
Stay the course. It's going to be hard. And whether you're dealing with the transitions, whether it's leadership in your local context, your change management through growth, whether it's decline, right? Or the cultural change. Are you dealing with another executive order? Right? Whatever it is, like those are impacting, and those brings all types of emotional things.
Well, let's dive in then. Let's talk about it. Transition, leading through change.
Well, let me just ask you this. You've been through and part of many different organizations and things, and you think about what is the most significant transition that you have been through, whether it be your org, your church, your ministry?
Well, you asked me this at the wrong time because I just moved from one state to another.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And that feels like the most significant transition I've ever been through. But I will say I worked in an organization that had a ministry or part of the organization that existed. They shut the whole thing down. And then they said, Missy, go rebuild us another one. And I think that was the most significant because when they said rebuild us another one, there was not and we're looking for this, and this. It's go make it happen and it needs to work. And so
was that exciting to you, or was that like, would you have rather a template?
Oh no, that made me more happy than anything else because a template, I feel constrained.
Okay.
Go make it happen means you trust the creative process. You trust the fact that I have one mission and that's for it to succeed.
But oftentimes what I think is you trust the process until I don't trust you in because you made a decision that I wouldn't have made.
Yes.
Oftentimes it's like, I trust you until you start doing things I don't like.
Yes.
You
and
doing.
I did experience that, but I think that there's ways even to handle those types of situations.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest transition for me was when I had to rebuild something from scratch. How about you? What was your biggest transition?
Honestly, it was during the time of COVID. You know, in 2020, you know, at the end of 2021, you know, all the things were going on. We're here in the middle of Atlanta. We're struggling with all different types of things. And there was so much tension in the air, especially being in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Everybody had a nephew, cousin, uncle who worked for CDC, so they knew more than Dr. Fauci.
They knew more than anybody.
They knew more than everybody.
Every doctor, they knew more than everybody. Yes.
And so we're dealing with COVID. You know, I'm a part of a denomination that has decided that they want to, you know, in the midst of everybody in their trauma, people dying, cops shooting people, doing all these things, and we want to focus in on CRT. We want to so there's all different types of things that was going. And our church was like, wait, why are we this?
Yes.
Why are we a part of this? Why that? And so there was just so much tension and here I am trying to navigate this.
Yes.
And, you know, the best that I can. But also at the same time, you have all of the stuff that's coming out with Mark Driscoll, the rise and fall of Mars Hill. And so you just put
I got my own inside parts of the...
Yes. But I mean, you put all those together.
Yes.
COVID, trauma, people are not meeting. And you're trying to lead through this.
Yeah.
And what it ended up happening for us is that we ended up having over 60% of our elders leave.
Wow.
Most of our church left.
Wow.
You know, all the tension, all the things. I've been called Mark Driscoll. There's all of the things that has, you know, that came. And so that came with that. But it's just like, all I knew is like, I wanted to go anywhere besides here. Right. And it's just like, but this was a major change. This was a major shift. And I was just like,
all your eggs were in the here basket. Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So that was difficult. I've lost many friendships that I lament to this day. Right. That have lost. But it's like, you know, it's just trying to remain faithful to the Lord's call, but at the same time being, apologetic but at the same time, but also recognizing that, like, to walk with a clear conscience. And it was books like, 2 Timothy, when Paul encouraged Timothy, man, things are hard. All the things are taking place, but like endure. Yes. Stir up the gift. Stay. Right. And I think it was a significant, and here's what I've learned, you know, and again, and I think to some degree right, to some degree wrong, but I think people are not nuancing. What I've learned in the midst of this is that if you have been in leadership for more than a decade, you have been through something like that.
Oh, my goodness. I feel like if you've walked with Christ more than a decade, you got some change, transition stuff that you can talk about. What I think is important, though, is whenever I am thinking through what it means to lead through change, I'm often thinking, who are the people in the Bible who have experienced these types of things? Or I've watched the way they wrestled through tension. And on the positive side, I am often brought back to Hannah, who in the midst of, this wasn't transition, but this was just a tough life. Things were hard in their relationship in her home. I think, but she prayed and she wept and she lamented, she did all that stuff. But to watch her flourish, her faith in Christ flourish, flourish in that season is beautiful to me. Yeah. As opposed to
it wiltering.
Right. Yes. But when I think about specifically as a leader and I think about change, I remember, I don't think people recognize sometimes, but people go to school to learn how to walk an organization or a ministry or a church through change. It's called change management. Yes. And it's not small. So I do want people to be able to understand that we're not talking about when you're a leader and you're walking through change, it's not like this little thing. There's a lot that goes into helping a transition happen well. I was the chairman of the board of an organization. It's a $300 million organization. And the whole time, the thing that we were working on is, what does this transition look like? And how is this transition going to go well? And some of it went well and some of it did not. And so I think we have to understand that this is more than just being in charge when change is happening. Yeah. It's knowing how to lead through change well.
That's good. How do you prepare yourself for something like that, right? You know, how do you prepare yourself? How do you prepare your team? How do you prepare your organization when you know not if change is coming, but change is coming, right? That you're, especially in a season where there's so much distrust for the org or for the leadership that or the institution in which you're leading.
Well, what I think at the core of all that distrust is actually a distrust of authority. So it's not necessarily the church or the org, or it's a distrust of anyone who has what is perceived as authority, because people now, the way our society is set up is no one should have authority over me. I should be my ultimate authority. And I think that's when things really start to fall apart, because it's just not realistic. It's just not real. It's just not real. But I think in preparation for change, you need to start with yourself. You need to be prepared that change is difficult. It's difficult physically, emotionally. It's all the leaves, all spiritually, emotionally, physically. But it's often harder for certain types of people. And if you're not that person, that means you have to work up compassion. And if you are that person, you have to work up resilience. You know what I mean? And for you personally, you have to think through, what does it mean for these other people who are the leaders with me to experience this change? Because it's not just me going through the change. We have to be clear on why we're changing, on what is changing, and the mission, the language, the communication for this change. And then you have to think about every person that it impacts, and then be prepared for all of the questions, all of the pushback, all of the how, why, when, where, how much, for those things to happen.
And I want to just kind of double click on one thing, you know, especially as I was going through. I had a guy named Chip Dodd who really helped me through that season. He wrote the book, The Voice of the Heart, and all of that. But really, and it sounds weird or reversed, especially biblically, but like I learned that when we are considering the impact on all people, and you mentioned it, we got to start with ourselves.
Yes.
Because we've heard the statement, hurt people do what?
Hurt people.
Hurt people. And I oftentimes say and learned was it's hurt people who are not willing to confess their hurt become revenge-oriented people, and revenge-oriented people become vengeful people, and they hurt people. But if you tell the truth that you are first hurt, then I can take my hurt to people who know what to do with hurt.
Wow. That is Rachel and Leah. They were hurt. Their dad put them in a terrible situation. They were hurt. They're hurt each other, and hurt them children. So instead of having these 12 men who were able to walk out what it means to be the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, instead they have one set of sons turning on another set of sons, and then that hurt just kept going, instead of just being like, we are hurting and we're making a mess in this hurt. So
and I think that because it's so important that you focus in on self, on that, because if you don't say, I'm angry right now, I'm lonely right now, I'm afraid right now, what you'll end up doing is that you'll end up projecting that on other people. And so if you don't know where you are, what you'll end up doing is that you'll end up just kind of either raging out, or because out of it, self-protection. It's sort of like the idea of, you know, you've heard when cops talking about, it's like, I had to make a decision, but I knew I was going home to my family.
And you know what? I think leaders who are on the precipice of change also have to be convinced that the change is what needs to happen. Because if you're trying to convince people of something you're not convinced of, it's never going to work. People can smell out fraud. And so before the change happens, you need to be convinced that this is the thing that needs to happen, or you need to do all that it takes to then begin to be convinced before you start the change.
So, but okay, let's just say I'm convinced. I'm convinced that I know it's going to happen, but I'm afraid that it's not going to happen.
You're afraid that it's not going to happen, or you're afraid of what it takes to make it happen?
I'm afraid that we will start, what it takes to make it happen.
Okay.
So it's just like you said, you just made this move, right? And then, it's one thing to make a decision to move. But it's another thing to go and find a house. Buy a house.
Move my family.
Apply, all the things, so, and what if it fails?
Well,
right? And even
that's
not
been
even
my
about what if it
experience
fails.
before.
Yeah.
So yes.
But it's not even more so about what if it fails, but it's what about the fear that we have that we're making a decision, we're responsible
Right.
for a decision, and I'm afraid that I'm about to
Mess things
lead
up.
these people
And it don't work out.
and it don't work out.
Well, I just said in a call, I was on a call not too long ago with this little group, coaching group. And one of the things we were talking about was courage, right? Courage is not an absence of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Courage is recognizing that, yeah, I am afraid, but I'm still going to go do this thing because I'm convinced that this is the thing that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's less about experiencing the fear, because you're going to experience the fear. You're human.
Mm-hmm.
If this fails and you're the leader, it's on you.
Yeah.
And I've carried that a million times while I'm taking the next step. Like, I think we should do this, but this might fail. I think we should do this. But I really do think that that's courage. And I also think that there's so much of that. If I'm convinced that God is saying this and God is calling me, then it's faith.
Mm-hmm.
To me, faith is not, faith is, I have my own working definition of faith. Okay. So faith is intellectual assessment, but it's also healthy discernment. And when you come with those things together, it's a lot of faith can't be proven.
Mm-hmm.
I can't prove to you that this is going to work, but I have done the work to make sure that all of my ducks are in a row, and I've discerned, I've talked to other wise people, and I've even checked the budget. Like this, we can afford it. So now we have to take that step, and that step is faith.
Yeah. No, and I think that's really good, because a lot of times when we talk about this idea of fear can either lead us to faith, because faith, again, fear is just simply saying I'm not in control and there's possible danger, right? There's possible danger, and and it's just like, I think that's an important thing. So I oftentimes talk about, like, for me, I have this love-hate relationship with flying.
Okay,
right?
yes.
It's just like,
yes, because when you take off, you're like, this is not supposed to be happening.
This is not supposed to be happening. And so literally every time I get on the plane, I touch the airplane as I'm walking in. I says, Lord, I'm not in control.
Yes.
I'm afraid, but I know where to take my fear to. The one who's in control. Because what ends up happening, and the mistakes that I believe leaders make, is try to act like they're not afraid, right? When they make a decision, they know it's the Lord's will. They know, but they still act like they're not afraid. Because something can be the Lord's will, but you still have fear and you're still afraid.
Yes.
And so, but what happens is, like, well, I got to prove that I'm not afraid. And when you don't admit you're not afraid, what you end up doing is you end up talking more. You end up compensating, because if you're not willing to confess your fear, what ends up happening is you try to take control of the narrative. Yeah. You try to, like, make sure that I'm going to create this fear-proof methodology. And so what ends up happening is that I found out that believers, especially leaders, oftentimes we have the same faith of, like, Jacob or his mom was just like, hey, I have enough faith as long as I know as I can manipulate the situation to go in my favor.
Right.
And so we take control instead of just simply trusting God. Right? He has blessed me. He has confirmed this.
Yes.
Instead of taking it into my own hands, trusting him that he's going to be able to do it.
To do what he said.
Right? So I think that's a mistake that we oftentimes make, is that we can be convinced that something is God's will, but still simultaneously still be afraid.
And that's okay.
But not willing to admit it, what we end up doing. And I think being afraid is okay. Not be willing to admit it to anyone
unhealthy.
Is what's unhealthy.
Yes.
And it ends up hindering the mission.
Yes.
It ends up hindering what we're doing. And it ends up, like, lack of trust, in the leadership, because it's just like, because we're trying to become more than what we genuinely are.
I trust that this doctor is going to do this surgery well. That don't mean I'm not afraid, because he made me sign this paper saying I could die.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's always the best thing to sign.
Yeah,
as soon as you're going to go under.
Right. You're supposed to be the best one who does this in the world, but you still are saying, it could be ups. Right. Yeah. So I think when it comes to change, though, often we are bringing in more, either we're bringing in our own poor experience with change in the past. Maybe we watched something fail. Maybe we didn't make a good choice before, or we're bringing in a lack of trust in either our decision, our leadership, or, all of those things. And I think we need to be willing to say, this is what's going on in my heart. I am afraid because I'm not afraid to say I'm scared. Yeah, I'm going to run this race. I'm scared, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think
it's going to work.
Yeah.
I don't know what place I'm coming in, but I'm
Yeah.
going to finish that race.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about this because, as a visionary,
Mm-hmm.
as someone who I love leading organizations, you lead organizations, like, how do we know? You talked about discernment earlier. How do we know the difference between temporary disruption
Mm-hmm.
and spirit-led transitions, right? Like, how do we discern the difference? Like, okay, this is going to be a temporary disruption that we're having, or we're just changing things, versus something that is, spirit-led. Because sometimes half the crowd is saying, "Oh, this was obviously the spirit," and then the other half of the people was like, "You just was bored last night."
I mean, the spirit can be bringing about temporary disruption, right? To teach us something. But I think there's a difference between I got this great idea and now I don't like. I told you to paint the wall black. I got a new idea. I hate the way black looks. We're going to paint it white. That's different than I have really spent time seeking the Lord's face on black or white. And though we did spend $20,000 on black, I do believe that right now this is not the season for that, and we need to go white. And the part of the way I know that is because after I prayed, or while I was praying, I also talked to a few other wise people who recognize that this black paint is not the right one for this season. I think that I, Missy, have watched myself make enough emotional decisions that now I don't necessarily want to just jump at every brilliant idea that I think I have. It's more like every idea that I think is brilliant is what I'm trying to say. It's more like I got this idea. I think it's a good one. Let's talk about this. And I find more comfort.
So when you said let's think about this,
let's
who
talk
is that?
about
Is that
this.
me, myself, and I?
No, it's other. No, I'm talking with other leaders. I'm talking about people I trust. I'm talking to people who have been in this situation.
And what if those leaders say, "Nah, it's not a good idea," but you feel like this is something that the Lord is calling you to do?
The first time I was ever going to make a big change, I was responsible for the change I was telling you about. From one, the org shut this thing down, and then they wanted me to rebuild it. Someone said to me, "I want you to make sure you read the story of Rehoboam." And I remember, okay, Rehoboam, this is David's grandson and Solomon's son. So wisdom is oozing. Okay. Wisdom is oozing. I mean, we have the Psalms and Proverbs because of your dad and your grandfather. So if you've read 10% of this stuff, you should have some decision-making skills. But Rehoboam did a terrible job. And part of the story is that he was asked to make a decision, or it was asked a question. He said, "Go away and I'll make a decision." They came back. And I mean, while they were away, instead of seeking the Lord, seeking wisdom, and then giving a decision, he went straight to the wise people, listened to them, and said, "You know what? I hear you, but I want to go talk to my friends." And then he took his friends' advice. He had a choice. He had a choice to make in that moment, and he chose to listen to his friends. And for me, if 5 wise people that I came to you and I said, "I think we should repaint these walls," and all of you say don't, then I got to pause. As much as I think my idea is brilliant, I need to pause if the people I trust is telling me something different. And that's just that's me. That's me. Some people,
they want to move forward anyway.
And praise God. And it may work. I'm just saying, if we move forward, you better believe that I've gone back to those 5 people and told them why I'm still moving forward. And I still want to hear what they have to say.
I think that's wise, because oftentimes even we've been talking about it like on this leadership level, that the impact that it has. But I think if we kind of go in with this, I'm going to prove to everyone, I'm going to listen, because it is. I mean, and again, like I for me, sometimes I'm constantly sad because what I didn't share about earlier about the tension that I had, part of that tension was led because of this conflict that we talk about, missions and ethics. For me, it was coming off of 2020. We didn't plan a church in 2019. We said we're not, we didn't plan anything. 2020 we was kind of on hold because of COVID.
Right.
2021 was there. And then at the end of 2021, I'm back. I'm just like, man, 3-4 years. We haven't been planting churches. We haven't did anything.
And that's been your rhythm.
And that's been our rhythm. We've been planting a church a year.
Right.
For years. And for now, as an apostolic leader for 3 years, I have not planted a church, been a part. And I'm just like, hey, y'all, it's time. It's time to, I had this whole thing, Ocean's 11. I was just like, we're going to put away your side hustles. Let's get back on God's plan. Like, let's get back together. And I was met with, it's not time. The people are still tired. The people, and so for me, I was just like, Lord, I wrestled with the Lord and I wrestled with him. I was just like, maybe I'm not the pastor for this church. And so I had to really deal with my own person. I was like, I'm feeling like, but the people that are around me, the wise people, the wise men, or the people had a totally different vantage point.
Yes.
And so like for me, I was just like, well, like I know I was dying inside. Right. And so that was a real conflict. That was real tension that I had. And so that's what was one of the things that triggered some of these events that came
with
the transitions and the hard and all those things. And so again, it's just like, man, I wish we could like create this, this thing is like, it's always this, it's always that. But I mean, there is just a tension that we have as, as leaders. To create.
Sometimes it is best if the issue is these 6 leaders see that this is the thing, and I'm adamant that it should be something else. Sometimes I'm the problem and I need to be removed from the situation. I worked for an organization where there was a clear mission, and I thought the mission was different. That was me. And as a leader in the org, I realized I am not a good fit. It's not that this train is not supposed to go that way. It's not that the people around me have not communicated. It's not that there is not people backing this and all of you are, I'm the problem. And so I may need to remove myself. And that was hard because I'm a leader and I want to go lead and I want this to go well. And I want my name to be attached to the success of this thing. And not because I want success, but because I'm here to serve in ministry. Yes. So if it doesn't feel right, maybe this time it's me. And I did. I stepped back. I removed myself. The ministry is still going strong. They're still moving forward. And it was humbling to say, oh, I'm the problem. Yeah. But you know what? After I left, they still have to deal with change management and what it means to replace someone. And I had to do the work in myself. What does this transition mean for me as a leader? And what does it look like when I step into leadership anywhere else to learn what I'm supposed to have learned in that season and recalibrate it myself so I don't take broken pieces from wherever I was into the next thing.
Amen. That was really good. I think, as this has been a really good conversation, right? And I think part of it is that there's no, oftentimes it's a very clear and succinct answer to any of this, but Missy, like, can you summarize kind of what we've been talking about, summarize, and then like give a couple of nuggets of advice ultimately of what we're saying?
Earlier when we were talking before we even got on here, we were talking about stats. And one of the things we read is that 70% of organizations that are going through change fail. And I think there's a sense that failure happens. Yeah. So you don't have to feel like, I can't believe my thing failed or my plan or this change failed, because it's actually a normal. Yeah. That doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't feel good, but just putting that in perspective, those things fail. But I think another thing to recognize is that change management starts with managing the change that we have to make in ourselves. So you need to be prepared. You need to be clear. You need to make your intellectual assessments, and you need to have healthy discernment, and you need to be able to speak to why you know and you believe that this change has to happen first. 2, you have to go to the wise people around you that you trust. That's good. And talk with them through it, and be willing to hear the things that you don't want to hear. Yeah. That's where I think Rehoboam went wrong. Well, one of the ways he went wrong was wise people gave him advice, but he didn't want to hear it. And even as the leader, as the president, as the CEO, as the founder, as the boss, whatever, as the pastor, you have to be willing to hear from people who are wiser, more experienced than you. And then third, I think you have to have the ability to recognize that the impact of change is more than just you. It's every person that this change touches. And there has to be a sense of compassion and maybe open-mindedness on how you're going to deal with the way this impacts all of these people so that we can move forward together, not I'm going and dragging you behind me.
That's so good. And I want to double click on what you're saying. I think personally, we have to be able to identify where we are because there's a lot, it may be God-driven, but it still may produce some fear.
Yeah.
It may produce some hurt, some loneliness, some anger.
Yes.
In that. And I think we got to be able to identify, explore that.
Yes.
Why is this coming up in me? And then being able to express what I need, right? And go to the places where you can get your healing because you don't want to be broken in that. So I think that's specifically. And then the other thing is that we got to take transition slow.
Yeah.
Because I think that was out of all the things, I think that's the number one thing that I regret is it's like I felt something. Obviously, this is not it.
Right.
Let's just do it.
Yes.
And I didn't consider the impact of the people. There's people right now who are still not in churches because of the transition that we're in. So they've been added to the number of church hurt and all of that. And I just think that like we have to think beyond just what's going on a leadership level.
Yes.
And take the transition slow because oftentimes we just think about ourselves. But we have to think about like the people that God has entrusted with us. And I'm talking about whether you're a ministry leader, whether you're an organizational leader, a business leader, right? Our decisions impact everyone. Just think about David, like because David counted his men. Yeah. God took out so many people. Yeah. Right? We always think about that. Where's David in that story? And so it's just like, how do we stop counting our people? But what if you were one of the 200,000 people or however many people that got impacted because of David's decision?
Right.
And I think
then their families.
And their families.
Right.
And I think, so as leaders, we have to consider the impact. Yeah. Not only that it's having on your own personal impact, but you got to consider the impact on so many other, the reciprocal, the effect that will impact those that you lead.
That ripple.
That ripple effect.
Yes.
And so that's what I would just say that it is. And and so I just want to really hope that, that we walk with humility, we walk with a level of sobriety, and just recognizing that, like, what we've been called to is hard. Yes. And it's just not for us to kind of just, act like, just forget it. And, like how Charles Barkley used to say, I ain't nobody's role model, so it just gives us license to do whatever.
That's not how it works. That's not how leadership works ever. Right.
Because we're responsible and we got to take responsibility. And so
that's great.
Yeah.
Well,
I appreciate you.
This is great. And I'm sure your candid conversation is a blessing to somebody, to many people. So thanks for sharing.
Amen.
Amen.